at the Federal Reserve briefly. Ron Paul's a big critic of it because of the secrecy and because of the fact that they obviously help out insiders. But they've got a big PR campaign going. They've been on record now publicly attacking folks that are upset about their crony capitalist anti-free market policies. Now some memos and documents have come out that they're basically going after Ron Paul and others behind the scenes. They are creating a database of Americans that criticize them. That came out a few months ago. What is your view, not just on the Federal Reserve, but it's European central bank counterparts, and now they're open calls for a banking world government run by the very same people that have gotten us into this Ponzi scheme?
Well, I don't think world government will work, because I've been around the world twice. There are too many different kinds of people. They're not going to put up with a single dictator anywhere. That's not practical. Somebody could try it. It will not work. Napoleon tried it. Lots of people have tried it. It's not going to work, I assure you. But as far as central banks, in America, we've had 3 central banks in our history. The first 2 disappeared. This one's going to disappear too, Alex, because they keep absurd mistakes. I mean, 5 years ago, the American Central Bank had $800 billion of government bonds on its balance sheet. Now it's got nearly $3 trillion of garbage on its balance sheet. They've been buying up all the garbage in sight to save their Wall Street friends. And that's Timothy McGeithner, for instance, the Treasury Secretary, because he bailed out all his friends on Wall Street. So they said to Obama, give him the job, give him the job. So central banks around the world, for the most part, are not doing a good job. And we'll get rid of them. The world without central banks will have problems, as we've learned. But unfortunately, a world with central banks, or like the Fed anyway, and the Bank of England, are going to be worse. They're running up staggering debts that you and I have to pay for, and our children, and they're printing huge amounts of money. So they're going to destroy themselves. Between Greensky, they will definitely destroy themselves. But in the meantime, we have to put up with them. Now, there's some central banks that are reasonably good. We just happen to live in a country be citizens of a country which doesn't have a sound central bank.
Jim Rogers is our guest, and he's again been very gracious with his time. JimRogers.com. If you're just tuning in for the first time, I'm Alex Jones with Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.tv. We're using the Infowar to fight the creation of a global dictatorship, a prison planet. The Chinese said last year that the U.S. would probably lose its AAA plus. Now it's gone to AAA. I remember reading articles where you were commenting on that as well. Now we have seen that happen. Geithner said it would never happen, and the Chinese laughed at him. When he said we won't devalue the dollar at that university, they laughed at him, 2-3 years ago. Now the Chinese government and others are saying, look for another downgrade. And Obama has come out and admitted that Americans are lazy sometimes. He means his supporters are, not the average American actually paying for his supporters. But what is your view on the downgrade? And after the Federal Reserve and the insiders have destroyed America, will any of them go to jail like Bernie Madoff? Because he said, hey, when I got to Wall Street, I learned at this level it's all a Ponzi scheme. And so I guess Ken Lay and Bernie Madoff, I mean, are they just smaller players in the same system that's become totally criminal? So your view on the downgrading and then Bernie Madoff.
Well, Alex, first of all, you should not listen to Geithner. Go back and look at his record. He's never, ever been right about anything. It's a start. Look at Bernanke. He's been in Washington 7 or 8 years. The man has never been right. It's terrifying. And yet people pay attention to him day after day. 4 years ago, the Federal Reserve, the head chief economist at the Federal Reserve, wrote a scathing paper saying all the people who say that housing is going to be a problem and we're going to have serious problems in America are nuts. How can they possibly say things like that? We have hundreds of the best PhDs in the world working for the Federal Reserve. We're a lot smarter than any of them, and they're nuts. You know the rest of that story. It keeps happening. The guys have gotten it totally wrong, keep getting it worse, getting more and more wrong, and making things worse for all of us. You look at the former head of Fannie Mae. totally crooked accounting, total fraud, sham. Guys walking around with tens of millions of dollars. He yanked out of the system. No, nobody's put in jail. Not touching, because he's a big political type living in Washington with lots of friends. And Fannie Mae at one time was the largest contributor to politicians in America. So no, if you're connected with the right people, unfortunately, you walk away, nobody touch you. Madoff obviously was a criminal, obviously should be in jail, but there are lots of other people who should be in jail too. Unfortunately, I'm afraid the ones in Washington are not going to go to jail. It's not good. It's not at all the way the system is supposed to work. It's happened now. 10 years ago, America used to complain about crony capitalism in Asia. Boy, Asia has nothing like the crony capitalism in Washington, D.C.
Well, Jim, things always seem to get a lot worse before they get better, and that's what's scary is, historically, from studying history, we've got so much further to fall before people actually wake up. But I think Ron Paul being so popular and my website being so popular, your information being so popular, I think is a testament that we're beginning to turn the tide. I do see the beginning of a very deep, really huge awakening taking place. In closing, I mean, are you starting to see the beginnings of that same awakening, or what's your view on that?
Well, of course, because things are getting worse. But unfortunately, Alex, if you study history, you will see that countries that get themselves into this kind of bind don't really do anything until there's a crisis or a semi-crisis. We haven't had even a semi-crisis yet. But, as I said before, we're heading that way, and maybe when things get really, really, really bad, we'll react and do something. The risk, of course, is that throughout history, people have often reacted to the crisis or the semi-crisis with a man on a white horse, a strong general, a strong dictator. America's getting more and more dictatorial in our policies and our practices.
And look at all the push for war. Briefly, what's your view on all the warmongering?
I would not be involved with any of these wars. In my book, I wrote much to my children. I said, everybody who's been in your family since the revolution has served in the military, including me. But when the next war comes, just get away from the war. Nobody's ever won a war. Even the people who think they've won a war, wars are not good. They destroy humans, capital, everything. So I've urged my children to stay away from wars. I'm probably more anti-war than anybody you know, because wars have never been good for anybody except a few generals who win.
Yeah, as Spenley Butler said, two-time Congressional Medal of Honor winner, war is a racket, and it took him a long time to finally figure that out. Jim Rogers, let me just say bye to you as the show ends here. You've been very gracious to spend this much time with us while you're working out, and I would love to have you back up when you're done traveling here in the next month to talk about all the other issues that you're researching. JimRogers.com. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Alex.
Wow, folks, it looks really nice there with the jungle behind him. Texas is great too, but I tell you, the sirens call to get out of Dodge, but we're going to try to save this republic. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for this edition of InfoWars Nightly News. Thank you so much for watching tonight.